This is draft season. It's all brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Happy holidays, everybody. I am John Schmelk, coming to you from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Joined as always on draft season from Essentially Sports, Tony Pauline, our resident draft expert. Tony, what's going on, man?
Well, what's going on right now is it's snowing in New York, which made my run a little bit hazardous. But for those of us who celebrate Christmas, it's nice because we'll have a white Christmas. And I should say that today we are taping this on December 23rd. So happy Festivus, everyone. For those of you, the Festivus, for the rest of us, today is the day you all wait for.
Yes, absolutely. For those celebrating Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah to you as well. For those that are going to be celebrating Christmas, hope you have a great holiday. And Tony, I will give you a chance in honor of Festivus to air some grievances over having to do a 2-round mock draft in December, which I know is a challenge. Take me through the process. What was this like for you with this particular draft class? And that's going to be our show today. Tony put out a 2-round mock draft. We'll go through it. That's going to be our show. Air your grievances for some of the bigger challenges you had trying to put this mock draft together.
There aren't that many players with first round grades, true first round grades. We've talked about that. We've talked about that in the past. I found myself kind of holding my nose as we got into the pick 20 and on, and putting some players that I think didn't deserve there to be paired with teams. When I got into the middle part of round two, I tried to remain, true to my board, but at the same time, I wanted to fill needs. And right around pick 45, 50, I was forced to put players that I had a third round grade on into the bottom half of the second round. Obviously, that's going to change. It's going to change because, it's all draft eligible players right now, except for those that have said they're going back, or a guy like Ty Simpson, who I'm told is very likely to go back. I didn't include them in the draft. But the bottom line is this, and we've talked about this before. It's not a good year to be at the top of the draft, to have a selection at the way top of the draft. And overall, it's on paper anyway, it's not a very strong draft. And I think that made it a little bit tougher for me.
Even though it's not as thick at the top, Tony, and like you said, we could get through this. I haven't done near enough work to have this statement in stone yet, but we might get to the point where we got like 12 first round grades in this draft class, like 13, like we might be at that number this year. Is it thicker in other parts of the draft to make up for that? Or is just this going to be a universal, everyone is, moved up 15, 20 picks, maybe a little bit higher than they should be?
I think it's going to be somewhere in between. I think you're going to have guys that are, moved up anywhere from 10 to a dozen slots higher than they should go. There are some areas, when I looked at it, I thought the receiver class, even though it's not strong at the top, it does have some depth to it. Although from my point of view, you're looking at more number 2 receivers.
Yes.
Than you are, true number 1 receivers. When I went through it again, I found myself reaching for cornerbacks. So it's not a real good cornerback class, as we've talked about. The defensive tackle class, I wanted to stick defensive tackles in at certain spots, but I'm like, there's no way this player deserves to be the 40th or the 38th pick of the draft. I just can't do that. So I think in some areas, it's probably going to be deeper than we initially predicted. In some areas, it's going to be as bad as we thought. But I think the overall theme is it's not like last year where you had Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter at the top of the draft. It's not like last year. I don't think any of the quarterbacks, whether it be Fernando Mendoza, who I said is very likely to come out, Dante Moore, who's kind of 50-50, none of these guys are like Cam Ward that basically carried their teams on their shoulders. But listen, it's all on paper, right? And people can whine about it now. We won't know about it until really July of 2026 and the fall of 2026.
And look, Tony, there's always going to be a good player there to pick. You just got to find the guy, right? There's always going to be a good player on the board that you can select that's going to help your team. You just got to pick the right guy and find them, which is easier said than done, but it can be done.
Find them and develop them. It's one thing when a player looks good, and we've talked about this before. It's one thing when a player looks good on paper. It's one thing when a draft looks really good on paper. Now it's up to the team that selects them to develop that talent and get them to play. Some teams can't do it. Some teams can. We've talked about Giants are at the top of the draft right now, but they're not in a really bad spot. They got their quarterback of the future. Hopefully you get Cam Scatterbo back, and it looks like they got the offensive back. You get Malik Neighbors back. I mean, they're not in a bad spot. Whereas the other team that they share the stadium with, it's a disaster because they need so many players at so many positions.
They do have a lot of picks, though, to fill some of those positions.
They better hit
So,
them.
before we get to the actual picks, you wanted to go through some of the further declarations we had, maybe some of the All-Star game invites. What are some of the news pieces that have hit you over the last week since we last spoke that you think is significant to this draft process?
Oh, Jadarian Price, basically Jeremiah Love's backup, who's an outstanding prospect, the running back from Notre Dame. He has entered the draft. I think that the fact they didn't make the college football playoffs, the fact that there is talk that their coach may be coaching on Sunday next year, I don't know that that's going to happen, is soured it for you guys. Jadarian Price, the running back from Notre Dame, has entered the draft. He's my number 2 running back. He's my number 2 running back because, as much as anything else, that second tier of running backs, it really falls off. It falls off a cliff after Jeremiah Love because he's so good, but it further falls off because that second tier really isn't up to snuff. Injuries with guys, you don't know who's coming out. So I think Darian Price, interesting pick, doesn't have a big body of work, but with the class and with his potential, could go early second round. Casey Concepcion of Texas A&M, he announced for the draft. He's not going to compete to be the first receiver selected, but I think he's going to compete to be a first round choice. An explosive guy, outstanding running after the catch, and just a game-breaking return specialist. So I think he's a perfect number 2 receiver. Makai Lemon entered the draft. He announced that he's in, another first-round pick. Nico Iamaleava of UCLA has said that he's going back to school and he's going to go back to UCLA. I think both were great decisions. I mean, when you look at Iamaleava, and I know I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, I'm just going to call him Nico. He's a lot like Arch Manning. He was better at the end of 2025 than he was at the beginning of 2025, but he still needs a lot of work on his game. He's got great upside. He's got a great future. Unlike Arch Manning, there hasn't been much stability. You may remember what happened at Tennessee last year. He was kicked off the team literally right when spring practice started. He goes to UCLA. They're terrible at the beginning of the year. They kind of settled it down. Now they bring in Bob Chesney from James Madison. We'll see what happens there. Still, it was the necessary decision for him to stay in college and I believe go to UCLA, because if he transferred to another school, that's another set of questions that NFL scouts are going to ask him and grill him on when he eventually does enter the draft.
Yeah, and Tony, the Duke quarterback Mensa also going to be heading back to school for next year.
Which is a right move. Brian Parker, you speak about Duke. Brian Parker, the offensive lineman, we've spoken to about here. I've reported back in October he was going to enter the draft. He's listed at offensive tackle. He's the kind of guy that he's going to be a guard or a center on Sunday. So he needs to go to one of the bowl games, whether it be the Shrine Bowl, whether it be the Senior Bowl, and really prove that he can hold down that position and do it well. If he does, he potentially is the first center selected in the 3rd round. If he does not do a good job, he's going to be a very late round pick.
Yeah, a couple other ones I want to hit on here in terms of Senior Bowl invites, Tony. Geez. Jalen Kilgore, the cornerback from South Carolina, go to the Senior Bowl, and Cassius Howell, the pass rusher, edge rusher from Texas A&M, also going to Mobile. So 2 good players that, we might maybe hear at least one of them mentioned in our mock draft today. Will be at the All-Star game down in Mobile.
Yeah, and Kilgore's got great size. He's got great upside. Brandon Sissy is all the rage right now in South Carolina. He's probably the better athlete. He's faster. But Kilgore's a guy that has played well in spots the past 2 years. We've seen a lot of large, talented defensive backs, both safeties and corners, come out of South Carolina. Kilgore doesn't get the credit I believe he deserves, but he's a good player. And Cassius Howell has been a terrific pass rusher. He's more than just a edge rusher. I mean, he's a guy that you can use off the line in space. He can get out laterally and make plays. Going to be very interesting to see at the Senior Bowl if they use him in coverage at all. When they have those coverage drills, which really tells a lot. If he plays over tight ends in coverage, because we know he can rush the passer, but how is he making plays moving in reverse?
Gabe Jackas from Illinois, the edge rusher, heading there. And also, Tony, I was excited. David Bailey from Texas Tech.
Yeah.
That's someone that's going to go there, which is just tremendous. That's exciting. He's going to be there, which is great. We'll see, hopefully he does a lot, but he is like probably the number one kind of smallish 3-4 outside linebacker, edge rusher type, depending on how you want to, talk about Arvell Reese in this class. We're going to see him in the next round of the college football playoffs. That is a really, really nice get down there for the Senior Bowl.
And it's phenomenal. And I believe Isaiah World is also going to the Senior Bowl. And the thing about it is when we do our preview, one of our previews will be the Texas Tech Oregon matchup, and that big NFL matchup there is Isaiah World against David Bailey, which we'll get to see, in the second round of the playoffs. We'll get to see at the Senior Bowl. First of all, Drew Fabricant, who we had on the show 2 weeks ago, has done a phenomenal job. I mean, you look at these invites, the guys he's got going now, he's got top players at every position. Bailey's the top, is got to be, you're one of your top edge rushers. Isaiah World, as far as I'm concerned, is your top pure left tackle. And again, I'll say what I said about Bailey. Same thing as Cassius Howell. It'll be interesting to see if they use him at all in coverage drills. Ask him to make plays in reverse. He's more than just a guy that can rush up the field. If you watch him, he can move laterally. He can move in reverse. The thing about Bailey that's going to be really interesting to see is when you watch him on film, he never gets obliterated at the point of attack. He holds his ground against offensive tackles that are 60, 70, 80 pounds heavier than him because he's strong and he's well built. So that's something that's going to be very interesting to watch in those running run defense drills.
Yeah, folks,
you mentioned Gabe Jackson. I'm sorry, didn't you? Yeah. Gabe Jackson, it's going to be interesting to see how they use him. Do they use him in a three-man line, which they often use during Senior Bowl practices? Do they stick him inside? I'm sure during those one-on-ones, he'll be in either the A or B gap, between the center and the guard, sort of like basically like he was a defensive tackle. It'll be interesting to see how he does when he's matched up against a bigger interior lineman.
Yeah, and Tony mentioned our interview with Drew Fabianich. If you guys want to go check that out, it is 2 weeks ago on this same podcast feed. You can find it. Really good conversation about the process. Elijah Surratt from Indiana, the wide receiver, will be at the Senior Bowl. Traden Stukes, someone, Tony, we talked a lot about last week from Arizona. A couple weeks ago, he will be at the Senior Bowl as well. So Dom Orange, the big citrus from Iowa, he will be there from Iowa State, pardon me. So a lot of big-time names. Drew Shelton, I know someone that he has disappointed you a bit this year, Tony, but someone with a lot of talent. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl as well. So will Nick Singleton, the running back from Penn State. Romello Height, Jonah Coleman, the running back from Washington, who we've talked about. Jeremy Bernard, I think we mentioned him on last week's show. He's going to be there. So just really a long list of very good players at different positions. It should be fun. And for a draft that's very unsettled, as you just talked about with this mock draft, Tony, guys are going to have their chance to really help themselves a lot at these all-star games, at the combine, interviews, meetings, athleticism testing, all that stuff, to push themselves up boards as teams try to search for guys with that kind of high-end upside, with the traits. And whatever you can show in this draft process once the season's over is certainly going to help you, especially in a year like this.
And to get this roster for the Senior Bowl this settled before Christmas. I mean, we've had Jim Nagy on in the past. He was worried about filling slots because guys were going back to school. To have it settled, it's more of a situation now. And, if we ever have Drew back on, we could ask him this. Maybe he won't admit it. He can now pick and choose. I mean, there's no sort of panic as to there's more panic as to a player. You better make your decision soon because that Senior Bowl roster is getting filled up, and it's getting filled up with some of the best players in the 2026 draft.
No question about it. Anybody else you want to hit on, Tony, in terms of declarations or invites before we hit your draft?
Yeah, Colton Hood of Tennessee, who played exceptionally well, the cornerback. Everybody talks about Gerard, the other cornerback there, who hasn't played.
Jamal McCoy. Yeah.
Gerard McCoy. Hood has played exceptionally well. Started at Auburn, played at Colorado last year, really found himself at Auburn this year. Kyle Lewis of Pittsburgh. I had a Pittsburgh reporter reach out to me about Kyle Lewis. Great football player, but, I mean, he's more of a large safety than he is a linebacker. So I don't know that there's a big market for that in the NFL draft. You're looking at maybe an 8th linebacker, or maybe a 4th safety who's going to have to make his name on special teams. The kid, I can't blame the kid for entering the draft. He's not going to grow 3 to 4 inches over the next 12 months. He's probably maxed out his college opportunities or his college play as well, ready for the next level.
All right, so let's get to the mock draft here, Tony. You did 2 rounds. This is based off, I believe, the standings prior to week 15 in the NFL, correct? If I'm not mistaken. Or I guess that'd be prior to week 16 in the NFL. I always forget how many weeks there are
Yeah,
now with the 17 games.
it was after the games from a week ago. So it was after the games from December 14th.
Correct. So we did the order. You did not do any trades in this draft. We could talk about that potential, though, as we go through these picks. So you do have the trades that were made prior to this, obviously, like the Falcons and the Rams when they swapped the picks, the Jets picks, the Cowboys picks, the Packers picks. So those are in the right hands. And let's get moving here. So as we stand right here, Tony, and we're going to find out, this is going to change this week. We're going to know with the Giants playing the Raiders. Those are the two teams right now tied with the worst record in the National Football League. They have the top two picks in the draft. Right now, the Giants have the tougher strength of schedule. So they, quote unquote, win the tiebreaker with the Raiders. They have the first overall pick in the draft. And I think both of us, when we did our little mock, what was it, like a month ago now, I think this is where both of us stood, where if the Giants sat and picked, and we're going to talk about the trade situation in a moment, Arvell Reese as a guy that you can play as an outside linebacker, as a joker rusher. It's a little bit repetitive with Abdul Carter. I get that, but I just think he's the best player. And I think if you're picking first, and you just have to pick the best player and you figure it out.
I don't see Arvell Reese as an edge rusher. As I said before, he's a three-down linebacker. And as I said in my write-up in the mock draft, he's a guy that's going to help with the run defense, which is where the Giants need a lot of help. I mean, they haven't taken advantage of all the double-team blocks that they've gotten on the inside with their defensive tackle. He's a guy that can stuff the run. And I don't – it's not just – you're not adding another edge rusher. You're adding, a traditional three-down linebacker that can stuff the run, that can play in coverage, that can drop into space, that can make plays in pursuit, and, can blitz the quarterback when necessary. I think people get too tied up in, he's an edge rusher. He's an edge rusher. Yeah, and they want to broad brush the guy. No. We've talked about how this is going to be a terrific class of off-ball linebackers. Arvell Reese is an off-ball linebacker who can also rush the quarterback. That's why I had him go number one to the Giants.
Hey, Tony, I agree with you 100%. Ohio State hasn't used him as an edge rusher. He's rushed a passer, I think, like under 100 times this year. And a lot of that's been as a stand-up linebacker, not as an edge rusher. So I'm with you. He's so long. He stops the run. I think he'd be a better and a help to whatever defense ends up adding him. But look, you didn't do trades in the mock, but let's talk about this potential right now. If the Giants wind up with the first pick, I think we all believe they feel pretty good about moving forward with Jackson Dart and continue to develop him. So the Giants would say, all right, let's see what we can do here to add draft capital and make a trade. Who are the teams that you are looking at that are going to be on the phone with the Giants or whomever else might get the top overall pick if they're not drafting a quarterback that's going to be trying to trade up to draft one this year?
Well, first of all, if I'm a Giant fan, I'm hoping that Dante Moore stays in school, because the fewer quarterbacks that are entering the draft, the more the value of that pick goes up.
Only if you're picking first, though, Tony. If you're picking second, you want Dante Moore in too.
Exactly. So really, you mentioned the Giants and the Raiders. Well, who's draft selecting behind them? The Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. Both are teams that need a quarterback, which is like, the sun rising from the east saying those teams need a quarterback. And those are both teams that have a lot of draft capital. Cleveland Browns have an extra draft pick this year, extra first-round draft pick this year because of their trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, where Jacksonville moved up and got Travis Hunter. The Jets obviously have an extra first-round pick this year because of the trade of Ahmad Gardner, have a couple of extra draft picks next year because of the trade of Ahmad Gardner and Quentin Williams. So after the Raiders right now, you not only have two teams that need a quarterback, but you have two teams that have a lot of draft capital. You look at the Browns. The Browns are pretty set on defense. The Browns have a very good defensive front seven. Maybe they could use a cornerback, but they need a lot of help on offense. Whereas with the New York Jets, except for maybe one more offensive lineman, maybe tight end, Jets need help all over the field. So you would think that the Browns would be willing to give up more to move up and get the quarterback. And I think if you're the Giants, you trade only if you're getting good value. You don't trade just for the sake of trading down. You're going to basically get bids for that pick. And you only trade down if you believe you are getting excellent value for as far down as you're going to trade.
Well, I think your calculation too, Tony, and is you might just trade down one or two spots. If the first two players are going to be quarterbacks, you might get the player you're getting at one anyway.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think you have to make that calculation. You didn't mention the Raiders in that conversation. Do you not think that they're going to be in the quarterback business?
Well, I do, but I think that if there's only one quarterback, I think the Raiders figure, well, we're going to get the quarterback unless the Giants trade down. So could the Raiders offer to flip flop picks? Yes, it's happened in the past. We've seen that to get the quarterback. So I don't, the Raiders are a team like the Jets. They have They need a quarterback, but they have holes all over the place. Yeah. And we got to wait and see what happens with the coaching situation with the Raiders. I think their general manager's done a solid job, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, we will. All right, so you have Arvell Reese, the Giants at first overall. Second overall pick, Tony, I mentioned the Raiders. You have them selecting Fernando Mendoza. And for teams that, again, that might pick high, and whether it's the Titans or the Giants and want to trade down, they should all be rooting very heavily for Fernando Mendoza to continue playing very well in the college football playoffs to just continue to boost his value.
Well, they got to hope that he doesn't get hurt. I don't think that he's going to. I mean, he may boost his value, over the next couple games. We saw Will Howard play incredibly well last year. He really didn't move into the third round, second day, as people were talking about. So, yeah, he can help himself, or more, he can solidify himself. You know what you're getting with Fernando Mendoza. You just want him to stay healthy. He's going to be an asset to any franchise on the field, in the locker room, off the field. He's given some incredible interviews, whether it be the Heisman speech, whether it be the post-game interview in the Big Ten title game, which has just enamored him to NFL teams. So you want him to play steady, you want him to play consistent, and you, of course, you want him to stay healthy.
All right, then you got the Titans at number 3, Tony. Again, not in the business of quarterback here. Cam Ward, I think, has shown more than enough where you're moving forward with him. And you have Ruben Bain Jr. as the second guy off the board. Boy, talking to people around, Tony, that do the same type of stuff you do, it seems like there's a lot of mixed opinions on Bain, given what people think his measurable is going to be, specifically his arm length, and where he's going to fit in. I do wonder, and curious what you're hearing in terms of what the league thinks of him and where he might end up getting picked.
He's an explosive pass rusher. He can get up the field. He disrupts the action. He doesn't have great stats. With Tennessee, you got to wait and see who the head coach is, what kind of defensive scheme they're going to run. But I think Ruben Bain is indicative of what I said at the top of the show about the draft. There are no great players at the top of the draft. There really aren't any, Arvell Reese. But yes, is Arvell Reese comparable to Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter from a year ago? No, but he's the best player in this draft, or one of the best players in this draft. I think Ruben Bain is indicative of that. In that he's probably going to go earlier than he would in other drafts, just because there's no great impact defensive player, no outstanding left tackle, no shutdown corner, no game-breaking receiver. If there was a true bona fide knockout number one receiver, I would put him with the Tennessee Titans. But there's not. I would even consider a great pass-protecting left tackle for the Tennessee Titans. You got Cam Ward. You better be able to protect him. But none of those players are there. And the Tennessee Titans have been looking for pass rushers the way the Jets and the Cleveland Browns have been looking for quarterbacks.
No question about it. Let's go to pick number 4, Browns, Tony. They get their quarterback in Dante Moore. And right now, you're about 50-50, right? Whether or not he's going to come out. And if he gets some word that he's going to be a top 3, top 5 pick, that'll push him into the draft.
Well, that's what his team is saying. And they're saying, if the information comes back that he's going to be a top 3 to 5 pick, which I'm sure, which is very likely, it's a recommendation that, look, you're getting all this guaranteed money. You got this guaranteed salary. You got to look at either your emotion, staying with Oregon, wanting to win the Heisman, or from a financial perspective. And from a financial perspective, there's no question the NFL is the better route. He's still a younger guy. He's going to have a big decision to make. When I say the information is coming back, no team can say to Dante Moore, if you're there when we select with the third selection, we guarantee we'll take you before he's actually entered the draft. They can't say that to him to facilitate that type of decision from him. So the only information that Dante Moore will get back from the advisory committee is, are you a first-round pick? And I'm sure it's going to come back. His his team, his representatives can go and talk to specific people within the league to see what they say. But listen, I'd be sure you look at this draft class again. You look at the top of the draft class. You look at how weak it is at the quarterback spot at the top, and I don't think it's any question Dante Moore is going to be a top 5 pick.
All right, so let's go to the 5th pick in the draft, Tony. And this, might be the best player in the draft class. He just plays safety, and that's the Jets selecting Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State.
I can't see the Jets giving away all this draft capital to move up to get Fernando Mendoza. I like Fernando Mendoza, but I don't think he is a generational talent, a franchise quarterback type. I think he's a good player to have. I question whether the Jets can continue to develop him the way Curt Cignetti and the Indiana staff has been able to develop him. And the Jets have holes everywhere, including the defensive secondary, cornerback and safety. And, Aaron Glenn, a former cornerback himself, had a lot of success with, what was the kid from Alabama, plays back there, Brian Branch?
Yes.
In Detroit. Well, Caleb Downs is Brian Branch times 100. I mean, he can play over the slot receiver in coverage. He's great going sideline to sideline. I know he hasn't flashed this year, but it's been a different defense this year at Ohio State with Matt Patricia, and he's done what was asked of him, and he still played very well.
All right, let's go through a few at a time here, Tony. Let's go 6 through 10, and then we'll continue on. You have the Cardinals at 6, picking the first offensive lineman of the draft, Spencer Fano, the right tackle. The Saints going with Keldrick Falk, the defensive lineman. Really big athletic guy that is a very Saintsy pick. They don't have to go quarterback now, considering Taylor Shook's playing well. The Commanders, Jeremiah Love, the running back. We've talked a lot about him. The Bengals at number 9, going with Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. And then Francis Maui-Noah, the offensive lineman to the Rams. That pick coming via the Falcons in the James Pierce Jr. trade last year, at pick number 10.
2 right tackles. Very unusual for right tackles to be the first offensive tackles off the board, but you got 2 right tackles. Arizona needs a right tackle to play across from on the side of Paris Johnson. The Rams have an aging offensive right tackle. You need a guy to play the opposite side of Alaric Johnson. That's why I made those picks. Cincinnati, they could use an offensive lineman, but they have need a lot of help on the interior of that defensive line. Peter Woods, in my opinion, he's more bark than bite right now, but he's got great upside potential. That's the type of player at the position that the Bengals have had success with in the past. Keldrick Falk, you said it. I mean, some people will kind of roll their eyes at the Jeremiah Love selection, but basically right now it's running back by committee in Washington. And the fact is you put Jeremiah Love on the field, you're helping Jaden Daniels, you're taking a lot of the pressure off of him, and now you have an outstanding 1-2 punch.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, let's go to pick number 11, Tony. First of all, just seeing the Chiefs selecting at pick number 11, which is where we are in this draft based on the record, is just amazing. They go wide receiver again. Carnell Tate as a chief. They try to become a more explosive offense. You have the Vikings going the linebacker Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Mansour Delane, the cornerback, goes to the Dolphins at 13. The Cowboys get David Bailey, the edge rusher we talked about previously out of Texas Tech, a little Micah Parsons replacement. And then T.J. Parker, the edge rusher, goes to the Baltimore Ravens, who do desperately need to try to improve a pass rush, which has been anemic this year.
Yeah, I mean, and he's the type of player that the Ravens have had success with. That sort of smaller edge rusher. You can stand him up. You can have him come out of a three-point stance. Like all the Clemson players we're going to talk about, comes off a very disappointing season. If he had the year that he was projected to have, would have likely been a top 10 pick, probably would have battled Reuben Bain to be the first edge rusher off the board. But, it was a terrible season for him. You got to go back and look at the 2024 film and build from there. Let's start with the Chiefs at 11. They need a receiver. They just need a guy that is consistent, that is dependable. Travis Kelce's likely on his way out. You're going to need another bigger pass catcher that can come across the middle, use the sidelines well. That's what Carnell Tate does exceptionally well. Sonny Styles, an athletic off-ball linebacker. Andrew Van Ginkel is getting up there in age. That's why I went with that pick. The Dolphins need a cornerback. Mansour Delane, I believe in most drafts, is a bottom half of round 1 type of guy. No offensive tackle there because the offensive tackles came off early, so I go with Delane. David Bailey's probably a little bit later than I think he should go. Unless maybe the Chiefs surprise and take an edge rusher. Again, with the Cowboys, the type of undersized, explosive pass rusher that they have had success with in the past.
Yeah, the Cowboys tend to really go after need a lot of the time, and sometimes they get themselves into trouble with that, Tony. But I think the players in this area, and I think the Sonny Styles, Mansour Delane, David Bailey group will be the group that we're choosing from when we're giving the Cowboys players over the course of this process. I'm with you on that. All right, let's go to pick number 16, the Carolina Panthers. Anthony Hill, the linebacker out of Texas. I know you're a little higher on him, Tony, than some other people are. Avion Terrell, the cornerback, number 17 to the Lions. They certainly need help in the secondary. The Jets at 18. This is their second first-round pick. This is the one they got from the Colts, going Chris Brazzell to be paired with Wilson, obviously out there, a wide receiver. Then you have the Bucks at 19, Cassius Howell. And then you have 20th overall, the Steelers, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver at Arizona State. So a number of players there, Tony, that certainly fit needs, and big-time wide receiver starting to go off the board here as, you kind of dip into one of the deeper positions in the class.
This is one of the area, you asked me where I start to have trouble. This is the area I would usually not have an Anthony Hill in the middle of round one, Chris Brazzell, players like that. But because of the structure of the draft, because of the players in the draft, they start coming off the board earlier. I mean, the Panthers have a desperate need of off-ball linebacker. And who's their general manager? Dan Morgan. I think he's going to like Anthony Hill a lot. The Lions basically, to date at least, seems to have whiffed on Terrion Arnold. Coming out of college, I think Avion Terrell was a more established, more polished cornerback than Arnold was coming out of Alabama. He makes a lot of plays with his back to the ball, a little bit shorter, like Arnold, a guy that you would think more of as a nickel back because of his size, but he's a terrific cover corner. Jets have Garrett Wilson. They also have Adonai Mitchell, who's played relatively well. He's played better than I expected. Depending on how he finishes out the season, although there's just 2 games left, the Jets have a choice to make. Is it going to be Garrett Wilson and Adonai Mitchell moving forward for 2026? Or do they add a bigger playmaking receiver like Chris Brazzell, who is a lot more than a one-year wonder? He was good last year. He was terrific 2 years ago at Tulane, so he's got a good body of work. You just got to go search it out. Cassius Howell with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, again, the type of player that Todd Bowles has had success with, that smaller, speedier, explosive edge rusher that can play off the board. And then Jordan Tyson of Arizona State to the Steelers. I know a lot of people think Tyson's a top 10 pick. I don't think he's a top 10 pick, even if he's healthy. I think he's a real good receiver, but he's not very, very big. He's not very fast, but he's something that, the Steelers desperately need. Probably also going to need a quarterback. But you look at that receiver depth chart, and it's DK Metcalf and everybody else. DK Metcalf, what is it? Metcalf? Who's Metcalf?
Yeah, DK Metcalf and the Steelers. You got it.
DK Metcalf and everybody else. Right. He punched the guy in the stands the other day. I forgot.
Yeah, they have Roman Wilson there. He isn't exactly worked out. So, yeah, they have some work to do. Also the very the undersized, speedy wide receiver. His name escapes me at the moment. But, yeah. Definitely a lot of work there to do for the Steelers at wide receiver. Eagles at 21, Jermon McCoy. This is a very Howie Roseman pick. Try to find somebody that maybe is better than the draft slot, but he's coming off of injury. We saw them do that with the linebacker last year. You have the Texans at 22. Tony selecting Caden McDonald, the big defensive tackle, just to add to that defense for the Texans. Cowboys go back to defense. They didn't get the linebacker. Off-ball linebacker with their first pick in the first round. So this is their pick from the Packers. They go Harold Perkins out of LSU. Bills still looking for that wide receiver. They go back to the well, Casey Concepcion, who we talked about already. And then the Bears looking for a linebacker and C.J. Allen out of Georgia.
Bears at 25, I would have loved to put an edge rusher at that spot. I said so in the mock draft, but there's no edge rusher. So they go the second level of defense with a linebacker. The Bills you mentioned, Casey Concepcion. He's the guy that can take the top off the defense, which the Bills really haven't had for the longest time. He also brings impact as a return specialist. The Cowboys, I would have liked to put a cornerback there, but Avion Terrell's gone, and there's no other cornerback really worthy going in the middle of round one. Kenneth Murray Jr. is going to be a free agent, so they're going to need a linebacker at some point in time. As far as the Texans are concerned, Offensive line was a consideration, but all the top offensive linemen are off the board. I don't think that the guard from Penn State that everybody's in love with is worth the 22nd pick of the draft. Maybe I will after I watch the film. But Caden McDonald just seems to get better. The big interior defensive lineman from Ohio State surprised a lot of people, and he's just an impactful, forceful type of guy who is more of a playmaker than Tyleik Williams from a year ago. And you mentioned it about Philadelphia Eagles, with Jamad McCoy. They took Jihad Campbell last year, even though he had injury concerns. Landon Dickinson, remember the kid, the offensive lineman that had all those surgeries, and he's played well for them. So Ari Roseman is not afraid to go after these guys that got medical red flags, and they usually work out for him.
Yeah, they really have. All right, let's go through the rest of the first round here, Tony. You have Big Amari Washington, the defensive tackle, going to the Chargers at 26. At 27, you have the 49ers taking Isaiah World. I assuming that's some Trent Williams insurance as he continues to get a little bit older, still playing well. Caden Proctor, the big offensive lineman to the Browns. The Browns, by the way, all 5 of their starting offensive linemen are free agents this offseason, so they have to do a lot of work on the offensive line. Caden Proctor goes there. Mekhi Lemon, Patriots certainly need a wide receiver. At pick 29, I think he's a good complement to what they have. Then you have Colton Hood, the cornerback, Tony, you mentioned before, going to the Seahawks at 30, continue to bolster that defense. The Broncos at 31, Kenyon Sadiq. Evan Ingram hasn't exactly worked out for them. Sean Payton always looking for kind of that versatile Jimmy Graham-style weapon. Kenyon Sadiq certainly has that athleticism. And then the Rams at 32 with their second pick linebacker Deontay Lawson. They've never really valued that linebacker position much. We'll see if they decide to do it in this year's draft. All right, take us through picks 26 to 32, Tone.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers last year took Jamari Caldwell from Oregon in the 3rd round. He's playing very well. I think Amari Washington is actually a better player. He's more explosive, more of a playmaker. Fill another hole on the defensive line with him. You mentioned the Trent Williams. He's going to be 38 years old. He carries a huge cap number. And World is my top left tackle in this draft, top most pure left tackle. It could be more than assurance for the veteran left tackle Trent Williams there. You mentioned the Cleveland Browns. They need a lot of help on the offensive line. If they're going to take a quarterback, in the top 3 of the draft, you better be able to protect them. The Patriots, Mekhi Lemon, let's see if they make a trade in the offseason. Maybe they make some overtures to the Philadelphia Eagles about A.J. Brown. Drafting receivers has always been a sore spot for the New England Patriots. They draft them high, but they never are able to seem to develop them. That's what Bill Belichick did. I know that Mike Vrabel really values the receiver position. That's one of the reasons why he basically left Tennessee. I think with Drake May, who's playing phenomenal, you get him another weapon. You mentioned Kenyon Sadiq. I would not have him in the first round. But as we've seen with Sean Payton, he's a different kind of drafter. He drafts his guys for his system, and I think Kenyon Sadiq fits that. As far as the Rams were concerned, I was considering Brandon Sissy, the cornerback from South Carolina, but I just can't put him in the first round. Deontay Lawson just keeps playing better and better as an off-ball run-and-chase linebacker.
Moody's is a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's hit the second round. I'm going to kind of do this in pairings. I'll give who the team picked in the first round that we went over, and then who they kind of pair them with in round number 2. So you have the Raiders picking, because again, if you finish with the same record, then you kind of rotate where you select. Raiders at pick 33 here, Tony, and you give them Kenyatta Jackson, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. Of course, they did go in the first round with Fernando Mendoza. So trying to help the defense here after getting your quarterback in round 1.
The only other pick I may have put Denzel Boston here, the receiver from Washington, because they have desperate needs at receiver, especially after trading Jacoby Myers. They got needs all over the place, but I think they need another edge rusher or a receiver. I went with Kenyatta Jackson, who's got a much greater upside.
So instead, you give Denzel Boston to the Titans at the next pick. You talked about wanting to get help for Cam Ward. There it is.
Yeah, and they have a desperate need at receiver. So I think any top-rated receiver that's available to them, they'll jump all over them, assuming they don't make a trade in the first round or shock everybody by taking a receiver at the top of the draft, which I don't see them doing.
Giants at pick 35, Tony. They selected Arvell Reese with the first overall pick. And then they add Brandon Cisse, the cornerback out of South Carolina, with their second-round pick. Give Giant fans a feel for what he brings.
He's tall. He's athletic. He's probably better than Deontay Banks coming out of college, which I know a lot of Giant fans are probably laughing at because Banks has not worked out. He's got great upside. He just has to be coached properly. You got to get a guy in there to develop him, and you can hit a home run with Cisse in the second round.
No question about it. All right, let's go to the Jets at 36. After selecting Caleb Downs in round one, they pick another Caleb. This time, Caleb Banks, the big defensive tackle out of Florida.
That's what my proofreader said when he read the same thing. Listen, they trade Quentin Williams. They got holes all over the place. Caleb Banks didn't play that much this year because of injury. He's athletic. He moves incredibly well for a big man. He's not there yet, but he's got great upside. You fill another need with a potentially very good player.
All right, Cardinals in at 37. In round one, they selected Spencer Fano, the right tackle. They helped the offense. Deion Burks, wide receiver, Tony. We haven't talked a ton about him on this show.
And a lot of people are going to say, Deion Burks should go in the second round. You saw Friday night in the loss to Alabama how versatile he is, how explosive he is, how important he is. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Fill it in with a quicker downfield receiver that can also help return punts. That's Deion Burks.
All right, then we move on to the Cleveland Browns at 38. They've already selected Dante Moore, the quarterback out of Oregon, at 4th overall. Then with their second pick, which I'm trying to find here in round... No, maybe they did not have a second pick. No, they did. At pick 28, they picked Caden Proctor out of Alabama. And then they go with another offensive lineman, the big guard Vega out of Penn State.
Well, what you said. I mean, they could be looking for a completely new offensive line. You get two talented players. Caden Proctor, maybe a right tackle, maybe a guard. Ionia Penn State, a lot of people like him in the first round. I think he's just a power running guard that's going to be really good for that scheme in that sort of weather.
That second tight end off the board to the Texans at 39, Tony. They select Max Clare out of Ohio State. Their first round pick was Caden McDonald, the big defensive tackle.
This is where it kind of gets kind of funky and players start going earlier than I want. This is the pick from the Washington Commanders from that trade last year with the Commanders. Claire's a terrific pass-catching tight end. Don't know if he's going to enter the draft, but the Texans have a desperate need there. And again, the connection to C.J. Stroud, you give C.J. Stroud another weapon, you're going to make him more effective.
And then, Tony, at pick 53, I'll jump ahead here. Texans pick again. This is their own pick. They select Chase Besantis, the guard. We have not talked about him much on the show. Tell us about him.
I'm told he's going to enter the draft. Texas A&M season evidently ended on Saturday. I've not heard any official word about it, but he is a big power punch in the mouth type of offensive lineman. I wanted to go offensive line with Houston earlier, but there was no offensive lineman worth taking. Really a strong interior guy who moves relatively well. You can use him in motion. You can use him on the second level.
Bengals always trying to help their offensive line in front of Joe Burrow. Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle, Tony. Tell us about him.
Yeah, sort of like Peter Woods at the left tackle spot. The guy's got a lot of upside. He's just got to take his game to the next level. He's athletic. He blocks with terrific fundamentals, a real good pass protector. And I think with the Bengals, with Joe Burrow, you better make sure you can protect him because he's shown to be a bit brittle the past 5 years. This is a step in the right direction.
The Saints, after picking the big defensive lineman Keldrick Falk in the first round, they go Malik Muhammad, the cornerback, in round 2, Tony. Tell us about Muhammad. We've had a prospect of the same name a couple years ago that did not get picked. Tell us about this Malik Muhammad.
Yeah, I like him to Jade Barron, who was selected in the first round by the Broncos last year. I mean, a guy who plays over the nickel. He's got decent length. He's feisty. I don't know why people don't grade him as highly as he should. He's been a real good cornerback at Texas the past 2 seasons. I think he can play inside. I think he can play outside as well.
No question about it. All right, let's jump. Chris Bell to the Falcons, Tony. They do need a wide receiver to help Drake London, but he's coming off that ACL.
Yeah, and I mean, he may not be ready till the beginning of next season, if he's even ready 100% by then. But we saw what he could do this year. We saw what he could do the last 2 years. It's just he was so much improved this year. And he's a bigger guy. He's quicker than London. He's shown dependable hands. The injury when it happened was sad, but still, injuries heal. This is nothing out of the ordinary. So you draft him. You're just going to sit him out of camp and hope that he's ready for week 1.
All right, Tony, let's pick up the pace here. Chiefs at pick number 43. They picked a playmaker in round number 1. In round 2, they pick cornerback Chris Johnson. Tell us about him.
Yeah, a guy that we're going to see at the Senior Bowl. He's tall. They've had a lot of cornerbacks come out of San Diego State that had great stats. Chris Johnson's an outstanding cornerback. He's got terrific ball skills. He's got terrific size. He makes plays with his back to the ball. Going to be very excited for basically everybody else to watch Chris Johnson at Senior Bowl practices.
Let's pick it up. Vikings pick Mateo Ugalele after drafting Sonny Styles in the first round. Dolphins add another defensive back, Genesis Smith, to go with Mansour Delane in the second round. And then the Jets with their fourth pick in this draft, Tony. They just have so many picks. They have now Caleb Downs, Chris Brazzell, Caleb Banks, and then they select Jadarian Price, the running back here.
I wonder what's going to happen with Breece Hall. The Jets, he was one of the few guys the Jets didn't trade at the deadline. His contract is up. Are the Jets going to put the franchise tag on him, tag and trade him? Regardless, the Jets are going to have a hole at the running back position in either 2026 or 2027 moving forward unless they sign Breece Hall to a long-term contract. I don't think that's going to happen. As far as Genesis Smith at Arizona, listen, the Dolphins need help in the defensive backfield. The Dolphins need help at the offensive line. Genesis Smith is a terrific center fielder at the safety position, goes sideline to sideline, and hits like a ton of bricks defending the run.
All right, let's keep moving here, Tony. We got the Panthers selecting edge Joshua Josephs to pair with Anthony Hill, the linebacker, in round one. LT Overton, a very Ravens physical defensive pick, a linebacker, an edge player, to go with their TJ Parker edge player pick in round one. So they're doubling up there. They do need pass rush help. It makes sense. Jake Golday, the linebacker, going to the Colts. I believe he also just committed to the Shrine Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? If I'm not mistaken, the linebacker Golday? I think he did, right? He goes to the Colts. They did not have a first-round pick because of the Sauce Gardner trade.
Golday is a true off-ball linebacker. He's not as athletic as some of the other guys, but he's very instinctive. You're right about the Shrine Bowl. I don't know. I believe he was a little bit nicked up, so it'll be interesting to see if we see him on the field during Shrine Bowl practices. Carolina, Josh Josephs, edge. He's a pure edge rusher. He's a guy that makes a lot of plays up the field, very disruptive, can play off the line on occasion, but you're primarily using him standing up as a pass rusher or out of a three-point stance.
Gabe Jackas to the Lions after they selected Avion Terrell in the first round. We talked about him. No reason to touch on that again. Anthony Smith to the Bucks. So they now add Anthony Smith and Cassius Howell. He's the big defensive tackle out of Minnesota. He's played a little bit of a 3-4 defensive end spot there as well. And then Garrett Nussmeier to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tony. Nuss getting into the second round here, and the Steelers obviously still trying to search for their quarterback of the future.
Been a little bit banged up. We're not going to see him in a bowl game. I don't know if we're going to see him in the postseason All-Star games. But I think this is more where Nussmeier deserves to go. People talked about him being a top 10 pick, a top 25 pick. He's not big. He doesn't have a great arm, but he's a good game manager. Pittsburgh has a good offensive line, so I think that's a good fit. Anthony Smith at Tampa Bay. A lot of people don't talk about Anthony Smith. I've been high on him for 2 years now. Again, the athletic, explosive type of defensive frontline player that Todd Bowles likes.
All right, we mentioned the Texans at 53, Chase Pasantis, the guard earlier. You got Damon Wilson to the Eagles, Tony, an edge player. That's to pair with Jermon McCoy from round number one. The Packers at 55, Jalen Kilgore. We already talked about him. No need to beat that dead horse. That's their first pick. That first-round pick, of course, going to the Cowboys in the Micah Parsons trade. Zion Young, the edge player to the Buffalo Bills, always looking for pass rush help. And then Keith Abney, cornerback to the Chargers after they took Amari Washington in round one.
Yeah, and Abney just officially declared for the draft. A lot of people like him. I had him as a third-round choice, going late in the second round. People think people in the league I've spoken to think he's a lock second-round choice. He's got decent size, makes plays with his back to the ball. He's got a high upside. Zion Young, the Buffalo, again, the type of undersized, explosive edge rusher that they like coming up the field. Zion Young gives a lot of way in run defense, which is kind of he fits the Buffalo Bills' defensive line rather well, but he can get upfield and really harass the opposing quarterback.
All right, then let's move on here, Tony. We go to the 49ers at pick 58. It's like Derek Moore, the edge player. We have not I don't think you've mentioned him once on the show so far this year. Tell us about Derek Moore.
He's a taller guy, but he's strong. He's like a miniature David Bailey in the sense that He's never getting obliterated by offensive linemen. He's able to hold his ground. He's not as athletic or as explosive as David Bailey, but he gets a lot of force up the field. He can bend the edge, shows a decent inside move, uses his hands well. He's got a decent frame, which looks like he can add weight on, which will only help his game in defending the run.
You have the Jaguars adding Omar Cooper, the junior, the wide receiver out of Indiana. That's going to be a full house in that wide receiver room between Jacoby Myers, if they re-sign him. You obviously have Washington, who's played really well this year. You have Brian Thomas coming back. You have Travis Hunter. So that'll be a very busy room. Bears going Jeremy Bernard after selecting Luther Burden last year. We'll see if DJ Moore is still there. And then you have the Seahawks taking Emmanuel Pregnon. I think that's how you pronounce that, Tony. We have not talked much about him, a guard. Tell us about him.
Former USC player transferred to Oregon this year, has played incredibly well. Some people think he's going to be a first-round pick. I'm not one of them, but he's a real tough, punch-in-your-mouth type of player. Even though they took Gray Zabel last year, Seattle still has needs on the interior of the offensive. I think he's definitely the type of player that fits that system. Go back to Amari Cooper with Jacksonville. That pick was made before they signed Jacoby Myers to that 3-year extension. You got to figure, but I mean, even still, I think a defensive tackle at this point would be a good selection for the Jaguars late in round 2. I just don't know that there's a good defensive tackle that's worth a late second-round choice.
No, absolutely right. I'm with you on that. All right, let's go through the final 3 picks of your draft, Tony. The Patriots, after picking Mekhi Lemon in the first round, they go Jaysean Barham, the edge player, in round number 2. The Broncos go Antonio Williams, the wide receiver, to pair with Kenyon Sadiq as you continue to try to put players around Bo Nix. And then the Rams select D'Angelo Pons. They always need cornerback help, and that's their 3rd player picked in this draft. They also selected Deontay Lawson, the linebacker. And then with that pick from the Falcons, they selected Francis Maui-Noah.
Yeah, this is where it gets a little bit tough. You start reaching for players. Pons is a good player. We've talked about him a couple times.
He's just small.
They need quarterbacks. He's just short. But he's feisty. He's got terrific ball skills. Going to have another big battle this coming up weekend against the Alabama receiver who I've got going off the board already. Antonio Williams going to Denver. They need a quicker, sure-handed receiver that can sneak it downfield. I think if Antonio Williams had remained healthy this year and it played up to expectations, he's a potential first-round pick. And Jaysean Barham, I think, is the kind of guy that Mike Vrabel can work with. He's a little bit short, 6'1.5", but he's terrific. He's fierce. He's explosive. He showed himself to be a good pass rusher at Michigan. He was a good off-ball linebacker at Maryland. So he's kind of that sort of miniature version of Arvell Reese, and that people will broad rush him as an edge rusher, but he can do more than that. He can play 3 downs in coverage or defend the run.
Tony, where should people go and what should they be looking for coming out from you over the next week or so as we continue to gear up here for draft season?
Yeah, Essentially Sports. We've got some bowl previews. John and I will be talking about the college football playoffs on this show.
Yeah, that'll be next week.
Next week, yeah. I go a little bit deeper with some of the bowl games as far as the top prospect matchups there. Also we'll get through a 32-team needs and mock draft, 3-round mock draft for each team, which obviously is dynamic. It'll change as the situation changes.
No question about it. Tony, have a great holiday. Enjoy it. Merry Christmas, my friend, and enjoy. We'll talk next week.
Same to you and your family, John, and happy holidays to all our viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed being with us all year long. We'll continue to carry along as we get through the end of the NFL regular season, college football playoffs, and into the thick of draft season, which is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Coming to you from the Hackensack Meridian Hill Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. For Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmelk. We will see you next time, everybody.